Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So now we finally got an explanation from the Indiana Fever front office. And like I told y'all a few days ago, they were going to have to answer for some of the moves they made during this free agency process. One of them being signing all these point guards. Another being, why draft Raven Johnson when it felt pretty clear she didn't even want to be there? Now look, I'm still on the fence about whether this thing can work out with Raven Johnson. It's not impossible, but when you stack that move with everything else they've done before and after, it's got people looking confused. Like, what exactly is the plan here? But that was the situation up until today, because Kelly Krauskopf, the Indiana Fever president, finally spoke. And here's the interesting part. This wasn't some big sit-down interview. Nah, this was a call-in. No camera, no visuals, none of that pressure. She went on 93.5 The Fan and talked for about 10 minutes, breaking down the Fever's free agency decisions and, more importantly, the draft. So, we're not going to waste time. Let's get straight into what she had to say. Oh, we have got to get into this now. We know the Indiana Fever's front office has been an absolute dumpster fire. An absolute dumpster fire, guys. We all know. They look like they are
nobody
lost.
else.
They have no clue what to do, where to turn, what's going on.
Motivated. We continue to be
The
motivated every
president of
single time we step
basketball
on that
operations
floor.
and business operations for the Indiana
we
Fever,
expect to win
Kelly
championships,
Krauskopf, took to the Quarian Company podcast, shout out to them. She went in on how they're going to try to reinsert Caitlin Clark and get her back acclimated, and then what was the thought with the draft picks? Okay, we know the Indiana Fever have gone and signed 9 5'9" and under point guards, when they already have the best point guard in the world on their team. She addressed a lot of things. Kelly Krauskopf, come to the front. I need to hear from you. What is going on with the decision-making? What is the plan for Caitlin Clark? Because it looks like it's you guys' idea to try to build a team to win without her, rather than getting supplemental pieces for her. I'm trying to understand what's going on, okay? I don't understand the whole plan in terms of going into camp. The Fever have signed Shatori Walker-Kimbrough. We already went through that. Heading into camp, they have 8 guards, 3 forwards, and 1 center. What are we doing, bro? I mean, what the hell are we doing, man? I gotta hear her explain this. I gotta hear what she had to say about Caitlin Clark getting reacclimated. Let's take a listen, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's what you said, you know. I mean, picking at 10 is you're trying to get, obviously, best player you can, but positionally for us, we were really focused on a guard. We were ready if that wasn't available, but we were focused on a guard, and Raven was one of those guards. So defensively, certainly somebody that can back up Caitlin, that is going to be on a rookie scale contract for a long time, that can grow into our team long term. You know, this idea of trying to always find another guard every year is getting, we knew we had to shore that up if we could in the draft. And we knew, after obviously watching Raven all the years at South Carolina and knowing the kind of pedigree that she has, we were thrilled that she was there.
And one of the things and I was curious if you factor in these kinds of things, okay? I have a great deal of respect for Dawn Staley as a coach, and I think that she has a competitiveness about her, but clearly her record is such that she knows and understands the game of basketball. Do you factor that in terms of the element of training or coaching a player has in their background and who it was that was mentoring them before you get them?
Absolutely. I mean, those are all the things, just the intangibles that what they're exposed to every day from a coach like her. I mean, there's many great coaches in the game, but we know Dawn, obviously her track record as a player and Olympian and so forth. But, when you're exposed to that kind of coaching and mindset and mentality, that they're probably prepared a little better. I had one of our scouts, it's a new scout with us this year, and she went to one of their practices this year at South Carolina, and she walked away from there and she was like, Kelly, I'm telling you, like any player that comes out of this program, they're going to be ready for the WNBA. I mean, their practices are like pro practices, just the preparation and everything that goes into it. And again, there's a lot of great coaches out there, but it was just, something that you do know that you're getting with that player.
Which was a greater challenge for you this offseason? All of the business aspect of the WNBA and waiting and navigating through all of those discussions with collective bargaining, or coming off of a season where you got everything you could out of that roster and it was a dream run, but at the same time you were left with a lot of questions because of the attrition within your roster itself and the preceding things I mentioned from a league standpoint? Which one created the most uncertainty for you?
I mean, I'm always thinking about our roster. I'm a basketball brain first, and putting together teams, is what I've done for a lot of years. So knowing, going into this offseason, knowing we had a new collective bargaining agreement, there were going to be some new parameters around how we would sign players. The market was going to be reset to a certain degree for free agents. I mean, there were over 100 free agents. I mean, that's unheard of in an offseason for any league to try to grab players, and we only had a certain amount of time to do it. So, there was a lot of angst of like just making sure we took care of our in-house players. We wanted to return, obviously, Kelsey Mitchell and Lexi. And so if we wanted to keep some of our players that were with us, that understand what we're about and how we go about it, and that obviously complement, Caitlin and Aaliyah. So that was, and it was such a quick turnaround. I mean, Jake, I've never been through, I'm doing an interview with a draft prospect and turn around and have to do a presentation for a free agent, all within the same, 8-hour window or something. It was just a very hectic, probably 2 to 3 day period where, it was an interesting 24 to 48 hours for sure.
When you have a player like Caitlin Clark, Kelly Krauskopf is my guest from the Indiana Fever. When you have a player like Caitlin Clark, that is, I don't need to tell anybody about what Caitlin Clark is, right? Yep. We know that.
Yep.
But even though she's practicing with her teammates, even though she's around it, even though she's she's pretty ubiquitous within the field house when you go to different events there. But that's different than being in games. How long does it realistically take over the course of a season when you are reinserting something that is that big a straw mixing the drink to an extent for everybody to get that cohesiveness on the floor together back once again?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, you've been around it a long time. It does take a minute. But the thing about Caitlin that we've had a lot of great players here. She makes it so easy for everybody else because of her IQ, because of her passing ability, the way she sees the floor. I mean, she really creates a lot of ease on the offensive end, and just it's not that hard to play. You got to find the right players that kind of understand that, but it still does take time. There were moments last year when we were down the stretch where we were like, good Lord, imagine if we had Caitlin back and healthy, and then we were losing players along the way, but thinking about the opportunities ahead of us and knowing that, okay, if we get everybody healthy again, we lost Sophie partway through. I mean, she was shooting over 40% from the three, really helping us spread the floor. So there was a lot of optimism coming into this year, and knowing that when they get back out on the floor together, because we started seeing glimpses of it, when everybody's healthy and back on the court together, it's, we're hopeful it's going to take us a long way.
Kelly, I wanted to touch on this, and I mentioned it when, and I know the business of sport, sometimes fans, they fatigue of hearing about the business challenges of sport because it's a money oftentimes that most of us will never get, in a lifetime, let alone a year. And I know that there was a lot of cynicism about the WNBA in the early.
Wow. So she basically confirmed it. They wanted to draft a guard. This wasn't random. This wasn't something that just fell into their lap. This was planned. And that's the part that's wild to me. Because I thought once players like Gabriella and Flage were off the board, they'd pivot. But no, she made it sound like this was always the direction they wanted to go. And the reasoning? Passing ability, basketball IQ. Okay, cool, I hear that. But then you've got Stephanie White talking about playing her at small forward, off the ball. So now it's like, what the hell are we even doing? If the plan is to take the ball out of her hands, then everything you just said about her strengths doesn't even matter. It completely contradicts itself. That's where the confusion comes in. It feels like they thought they could just run it back and everything would be fine. But the reality is, other teams got better. Look at the New York Liberty. They've got size everywhere. They're rolling out lineups that are 6'4" across the board outside of Sabrina. The league is evolving, and it doesn't feel like the Fever adjusted to that. Instead, you go out and stack up a bunch of undersized guards. It just doesn't add up. And then this whole idea of reacclimating Caitlin Clark? Nah, they don't need to reacclimate her. Everybody else needs to adjust to her. This is the Clark show at the end of the day. And that was Kelly Krauskopf, explaining some of the reasoning behind drafting Raven Johnson, plus the plan for those later picks, likely developmental pieces, and how Clark fits back into the offense. But you heard it. Get down in the comments and let me know what you think. And don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, and share the channel.